The Wednesday Vespers of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. Glad you could be with us this evening. I'm Rev. Dave Hunter, and with me here is Rev. Carrie Muller. We're the fellowship's ministers. My theme this evening is A Time to Listen to Rev. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and to others. Begin by lighting our chalice.
We light this little pseudo flame to inspire us for a while this evening in the faith that the fire of Unitarian Universalism may burn brighter and longer within each of us, within our fellowship, throughout the metropolitan area and the nation.
Let us listen together this evening to the voices within us.
The voice of love.
The voice of fear.
The voice of joy.
The voice of sadness.
The voice of serenity.
The voice of anger.
May the symphony of voices touch our hearts and nourish our spirits.
In November 1967, the United States Commission on Civil Rights published a short report with the title, A Time to Listen, A Time to Act, Voices from the Ghettos of the Nation's Cities. It was based on and consisted primarily of quotations from witnesses at a series of commission hearings and state advisory committee meetings concerning urban racial problems. I joined the commission staff while the report was in preparation. My name is included in the acknowledgments, but I have no memory of what I may have done to deserve that listing. The report covered all the topics you would expect. We'll share with you what 4 witnesses testified with respect to law enforcement. In Boston, Reverend Virgil Wood, a resident of the city's Roxbury area, told of the difficulty one Negro family had in getting the police to respond to a call for assistance. Here's what he said. One family had called the police because of an incident in the area. They waited 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. There was no response. Then someone was smart enough to think of calling the police saying, "Get out here quick, there's a Negro beating up a white man." The police were there in 2 minutes. Alienation between citizens and the police is characteristic of slum communities, where police often are viewed with hate, fear, and suspicion. Common belief in slum areas is that policemen regard their role as one of protecting the white population from the residents of the slum. Reverend Wood stated, "A zookeeper attitude is maintained by the police toward the residents of the community." Reverend Parks testified that the Cleveland chief of police, in opposing the abolition of capital punishment, had proclaimed publicly, no need capital punishment. We need capital punishment in order to keep the Negro in line. By the way, I've not updated any of the language in these quotations. Some might seem dated now.
Mrs. Margaret Weathers, a Negro employee of the Cleveland Division of Recreation, testified that in December of 1964, while driving home with her 4-year-old daughter on a rainy night, a police officer ticketed her for approaching too near a red traffic light. According to Mrs. Weathers, the officer told her, "You appear in court next Friday." Mrs. Weathers testified that when she told him she could not appear in court that day because she had to be out of town, the policeman took and kept my driver's license. He took my keys and he said, "You are under arrest. We're going to tow your car in. We're going to take your daughter and turn her over to police officials, and you are under arrest." She testified further that she was detained for an hour and that when the police wagon arrived on the scene, there were 7 policemen, including a sergeant. Her daughter was crying and Mrs. Weathers was very disturbed. Mrs. Weathers said the sergeant released her with the following comment, "You better be glad your daughter is here and she is disturbed and you are riding on her coattail. That's why we're releasing you."
Gerald Rademacher, commanding officer of the police district, testified that when somebody makes a complaint, which on its face is facetious, doesn't appear to have any ground at all, he tells the complainant, "Look, investigating complaints takes quite a bit of time and manpower, so this is what I am prepared to do. I'll have the police officer whom you have indicated has violated your rights submit to a lie detector test. If this police officer is found to be lying, I will go downtown and make sure that he is reprimanded or dismissed from the force." On the other hand, I want you to submit to a lie detector test, and if it proves that you are lying, I will personally go down to see the judge and see that you be given 6 months in jail and fined $1,000 for filing a false claim with the police department. The inspector said that this practice usually resolved the matter. Next, a recent column by Charles Blow in the New York Times. The column is under the headline, "An Insatiable Rage." In the wake of the killing of George Floyd, a massive wave of protests has swept the country and the world. People aren't in the streets only because of a single killing or a single issue. People are marching as a way of screaming, a way of exhaling pain. It's an enormous group catharsis. This isn't only about the pain of police brutality, it's about all the pain. This is about all the injustice and disrespect and oppression. This is about ancestry and progeny. In fact, with every word of solidarity, with every overture by governments and companies, with every new law passed or reform instituted, the cry draws strength, because these actions are in all acknowledgement that those in pain have been right all along, that all of their heretofore unheard and unheeded protestations have been wrongfully ignored. People are in the streets because their backs have too long borne the weight of racism, or because for too long they've averted their eyes from it. Black people are saying, "See me, see what you have done to me and continue to do to me. Stand naked in your sin and stare unflinching at your reflection. You did this." They're saying, "Stop killing us." And in that, they mean killing in every conceivable way. Stop underfunding schools and overfunding police. Stop anti-Black bias in all fields, from medicine to employment to entertainment. Stop using 911 calls as a deadly weapon. America, just stop. It took centuries for America to hone its instruments of oppression. Every time part of it fell, it simply reemerged in a more elegant form.
After slavery was abolished, the Black Codes were instituted, keeping many restrictions that slavery had enforced and guaranteeing that Black people would continue to exist as a cheap source of labor. After Reconstruction was allowed to fail, Southern states rushed to rewrite their constitutions to institute and codify white supremacy, ushering in Jim Crow. For instance, at the Louisiana Constitutional Convention in 1898, Thomas J. Semmes stated that the mission of the delegates was to establish the supremacy of the white race of this state. In his closing remarks, E.B. Cruikshank, the president of the convention, bemoaned that the delegates had been constrained by the 15th Amendment such that they could not provide universal white manhood suffrage and the exclusion from suffrage of every man with a trace of African blood in his veins. He went on to proclaim, "I say to you that we can appeal to the conscience of a nation, both judicial and legislative, and I don't believe that they will take the responsibility of striking down the system which we have reared in order to protect the purity of the ballot box and to perpetuate the supremacy of the Anglo-Saxon race in Louisiana." This wretched language repeated itself in some form at other conventions. Terror became a tool to keep Black people underfoot. Confederate monuments sprang up everywhere. The Ku Klux Klan flourished and lynchings surged.
After the Civil Rights Act of 1964, mass incarceration began its climb, accomplishing many of the same things Jim Crow did before: voter disenfranchisement, employment and housing restrictions, overall punishment and disrespect. Racial oppression is infinitely transmutable. So people are in the streets because they're tired of chopping heads off the hydra. They're tired of fighting this oppression only to see it spring right back or multiply. It is exhausting and infuriating and maddening to be forced to fight always for what for others is free. It enrages when you realize that you're still fighting the same fight that your parents fought and that their parents fought. It is an everyday struggle to neither fall into despair nor explode in anger.
So these people are in the streets having their moment and having their say, and America would do well to listen and not try to silence them or soothe them. In fact, America listening and responding to these protests, respecting them, is one of the healthiest things the country can do. Because as protester Kimberly Latrice Jones said at the end of her viral video, they are lucky that what Black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
Now on to King, the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. One night, a juror came to Jesus, and he wanted to know what he could do to be saved. Jesus didn't get bogged down, kind of isolated approach of what he shouldn't do. Jesus didn't say, now, Nicodemus, you must stop lying. He didn't say, Nicodemus, you must stop cheating if you are doing that. He didn't say, Nicodemus, you must not commit adultery. He didn't say, Nicodemus, now you must stop drinking liquor if you are doing that excessively. He said something altogether different, because Jesus realized something basic, that if a man will lie, he will steal. If a man will steal, he will kill. So instead of just getting bogged down in one thing, Jesus looked at him and said, Nicodemus, you must be born again. He said, in other words, your whole structure must be changed. A nation that will keep people in slavery for 244 years will thingify them, make them into things. Therefore, they will exploit them, and poor people generally, economically. And a nation that will exploit economically will have to have foreign investments and everything else. Will have to use its military might to protect them. All of these problems are tied together. What I'm saying today is that we must go from this convention and say, America, you must be born again. So I conclude by saying again today that we have a task, and let us go out with a divine dissatisfaction. Let us be dissatisfied until America will no longer have a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds.
Let us be dissatisfied until the tragic walls that separate the outer city of wealth and comfort and the inner city of poverty and despair shall be crushed for the battering rams of the forces of justice.
Let us be dissatisfied until those that live on the outskirts of hope are brought into the metropolis of daily security.
Let us be dissatisfied until slums are cast into the junk heaps of history and every family is living in a decent sanitary home.
Let us be dissatisfied until the dark yesterdays of segregated schools will be transformed into bright tomorrows of quality, integrated education.
Let us be dissatisfied until integration is not seen as a problem, but as an opportunity to participate in the beauty of diversity.
Let us be dissatisfied until men and women, however Black they may be, will be judged on the basis of the content of their character, not on the basis of the color of their skin. Let us be dissatisfied.
Let us be dissatisfied until every state capital houses a governor who will do justly, who will love mercy, and who will walk humbly with God.
Let us be dissatisfied until from every city hall, justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
Let us be dissatisfied until that day when the lion and the lamb shall lie down together, and every man will sit under his own vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid.
Let us be dissatisfied. And men will recognize that out of one blood God made all men to dwell upon the face of the earth.
Let us be dissatisfied until the day when nobody will shout white power, when nobody will shout Black power, but everybody will talk about God's power and human power.
I must confess, my friends, the road ahead will not always be smooth. There will be still rocky places of frustration and meandering points of bewilderment. There will be inevitable setbacks here and there. There will be moments when the buoyancy of hope will be transformed into the fatigue of despair. Our dreams will sometimes be shattered and our ethereal hopes blasted. We may again, with tear-drenched eyes, have to stand before the bier of some courageous civil rights worker whose life he snuffed out by the dastardly acts of bloodthirsty mobs. Difficult and painful as it is, we must walk on and on in the days ahead with an audacious faith in the future. And as we continue our charted course, we may gain consolation in the words so nobly left by that great Black bard who was also a great freedom fighter of yesterday, James Weldon Johnson.
Dave will play for us. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over the way, the tears that have watered. We have come treading our paths through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of our bright star is cast.
Let this affirmation be our ringing cry. It will give us the courage to face the uncertainties of the future. It will give our tired feet new strength as we continue our forward stride for the city of freedom. When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds of despair, when our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, let us remember that there is a creative force in this universe working to pull down the gigantic mountains of evil. Power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. Let us realize the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Let us realize that William Cullen Bryant is right. Truth crushed to earth will rise again. Let us go out realizing that the Bible is right. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
This is for the hope for the future. And with this faith, we will be able to sing in some not too distant tomorrow with the cosmic past tense. Number 169. We have overcome. We have overcome. Deep in my heart, I did believe we would overcome. Now another piece from the New York Times, this one by Esau Macaulay, what the Bible says about rage.
Macaulay is the author of the forthcoming Reading While Black, African-American Biblical Interpretation as an Exercise in Hope. There are videos of Eric Garner and George Floyd being choked to death by police officers while pleading for their lives. There's a video of Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old boy who was shot to death while playing with a toy gun. There's a video of Almod Arbery, who was hunted and killed while out on a run. There's a video of a police officer mounting and handcuffing Jerry Beckton, 15 years old at the time, at a pool party. Visible evidence of Black suffering is not new. We have photographs of Black lynchings. The screams of Black voices and the smell of charred flesh was insufficient to mar the smiling poses gathered round our corpses. Videos are a reminder that the issue was never about a lack of evidence. They reveal the lengths to which those in power will go to avoid facing the truth. What is happening in those videos is a manifestation of systemic racism. To acknowledge what would call into question the system that benefits the powerful. When those videos stack one upon another and are added to our personal slights, a deep unsettling anger rises in the soul of a disinherited and beleaguered people. James Baldwin said, "To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time."
What is the focus of our rage? Are we upset with the police officer who placed his knee on the neck of a man, pleading for his life for nearly 9 minutes, while 3 fellow officers looked on? Are we mad that the vigilantes who got up in a pickup truck to hunt down an unarmed Black man? Are we enraged by the white woman who tried to weaponize the police by claiming that a Black man who requested she leash her dog in Central Park was threatening her life? Are we frustrated by the laws and customs that cast a pall over the Black experience? Are we wearied with the apathy of so many? The Bible is not silent about the rage of the oppressed. One of the most startlingly violent passages in the Bible comes from the lips of the disinherited. In Psalm 137, the psalmist says, "Daughter Babylon, doomed to destruction, happy is the one who repays you according to what you have done to us. Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks." Can wishing such an atrocity be in any sense a religious text? Psalm 137 is a psalm of the traumatized. It depicts the aftermath of destruction of Jerusalem, the sack of the city, sexual assault and brutalization of the innocent. What kind of song would you write if you were forced to watch the murder of your wife, your child, your neighbor? Psalm 137 is trauma literature, the rage of those who lived. The question isn't why the psalmist wrote this. The question is, what kind of song would the families of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Eric Garner be tempted to write after watching the video of their violent deaths? It would be raw and unfiltered, but more than an expression of rage, this psalm is a written record in time. It is a call to remember. This psalm and other psalms of rage require us to remember the trauma that led to their composition. We have a hymn with some of the words of Psalm 137, and it's in our hymnal. The miracle of the Bible is not that it records the rage of the oppressed. The miracle is that it has more to say. The same texts that include a call for vengeance upon Israel's enemies look to the salvation of its oppression. Isaiah 49 says, "Is it too small a thing for you to be my servant, to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring back those of Israel I have kept? I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that my salvation may reach the ends of the earth." Dare we speak of hope when chants of "I can't breathe" echo in the streets?
Hope is possible if we recognize that it does not rule out justice. It is what separates justice from vengeance. Howard Thurman wrote in his classic work, Jesus and the Disinherited, about how rage, once unleashed, tends to spill out beyond its intended target and consume everything. The hatred of our enemy that we take to the streets returns with us to our friendships, marriages, and communities. It damages our own souls.
The only peaceful future is a just future. Because we claim to be a people for peace, we must be a people for justice, even when it ever seems to elude us. Too many Black lives have been lost to accept anything else.
Back now to Dr. King. "Now let us begin," he said. "Now let us rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter but beautiful struggle for a new world. This is the calling of the sons of God, and our brothers wait eagerly for our response. Shall we say the odds are too great? Shall we tell them the struggle is too hard? Will our message be that the forces of American life militate against their arrival as full men and we send our deepest regrets? Or will there be another message of longing, of hope, of solidarity with their yearnings, of commitment to their cause, whatever the cost? The choice is ours, and though we might prefer it otherwise, we must choose in this crucial moment of human history.
As the noble bard of yesterday, James Russell Lowell, eloquently stated, "Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide, in the strife of truth and falsehood, for the good or evil side. Some great cause, God's new Messiah, offering each the bloom or blight, and the choice goes by forever twixt the darkness and that light. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet 'tis truth alone is strong. Though her portion be the scaffold, and on the throne be wrong, yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own." And now we extinguish this flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we gather and carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again.
May you know contentment and challenge.
May your grandchildren live in a world of peace, justice, friendly climate, and prompt, effective vaccines.
May your life be a testament to your faith and a blessing to the world.
May the love of this community sustain you until we meet again and all the days of your life. Amen. Amen. Well, there are